Darren Drieger, part of TSN. He's one of their hockey insiders up there in Canada. I think he's the first one I saw have this. Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs has signed an 8-year deal with the Leafs as part of a sign-and-trade to go to the Vegas Golden Knights. So a sign-and-trade. Now, the trade not done to Vegas. This is like a step in the process. Obviously, the Vegas Golden Knights are going to have to, they're going to have to obviously settle on the compensation and everything, go back. Although, obviously, they're going to make this deal happen in some way, shape, or form. But Mitch Marner, 8 years, $12 million a year for Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner, sign and trade, going to the Vegas Golden Knights. So, Graham, there it is right there. The big free agent, Mitch Marner, isn't even going to get to the open market.
Just like that.
Just like that. 8-year deal, 12. Again, this is breaking news if you're just tuning in. Mitch Marner signing an 8-year, $12 million contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs and is going to be traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, what's going back to Toronto? To be determined. To be determined. But we heard last week, Graham, Vegas was in the running, and Vegas was the team that we heard a bunch about Mitch Marner getting signed in free agency. But, and actually, Graham, let's go ahead and bring up the clip from Elliot Friedman of 32 Thoughts, part of Sportsnet up in Canada, about how Vegas approaching Toronto about Mitch Marner back at about the trade deadline. Let me know when we have that soundbite pulled up. So this is actually at the scouting combine. Elliot Friedman discussed about how the Vegas Golden Knights approached Toronto about Mitch Marner, again, back at the NHL scouting combine.
But I do believe one of the things that was talked about there was Vegas saying to the Maple Leafs, if you make Marner's rights available, we would like to talk to you about them. Once again, Vegas establishing that they like Marner. And I do believe over the last few days to a week, those conversations have begun. That the Maple Leafs and the Golden Knights have discussed what a trade for Marner's rights could look like.
Now, a big one is, how does the money work? Okay. Now, Elliot Friedman, also of Sportsnet, this came out, this is a part of his 32 Thoughts podcast yesterday morning. So again, if you're just tuning in, maybe you're just hopping in the car, maybe you're just flipping over, the Vegas Golden Knights are going to be trading for Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner signed an 8-year contract at $12 million a year with the Toronto Maple Leafs as part of a sign and trade. Now, how does that work financially for the Vegas Golden Knights? Well, Elliot Friedman says Vegas does have some work to do.
Vegas still needs to clear room to make this work. They don't want to trade Carlson, and they've told everybody that. They don't want to trade Hurdle, and they've told everybody that. They don't want to trade Barbashev, and they've told everybody that. So how does this all work? Well, one of the ways, and Kelly McCrimmon talked about this on Saturday with the local media there, is that Alex Pietrangelo, they have some decisions to make. And Pietrangelo, as I've said several times, one of my favorite players, going to the Hall of Fame, but he's going to be on LTIR for a while, looks like. So that will create some room.
So Alex Pietrangelo makes $8.5 million a year. The injury apparently for Alex Pietrangelo not only is going to cost him this season for the Vegas Golden Knights, but potentially could linger into the 25-26 season. Again, it's a pretty bad injury. So $8.8 million I can go on long-term injured reserve. They have $2.1 million in cap space. A name that was been floated a lot between this potential trade between Vegas and Toronto for Mitch Marner is Nick Waugh. Nick Waugh, you might recognize that name, Canes fans. Former Carolina Hurricane, Nicholas Waugh, might be going back. He makes $3 million a year, might be going to Toronto. So if Toronto's $3 million of Nick Waugh moving, plus their $2.1 million in cap space, plus $8.8 million in long-term injured reserve for Alex Pietrangelo. Well, guess what? Doing my honor and math here, Graham, which I know sometimes Tim Donnelly will struggle with, but that's nearly $14 million. If Mitch Marner is signing the 8-year deal at $12 million a year with Toronto as part of the sign and trade. Well, guess what? You make the money work, assuming Nick Wall is part of that deal. So the trade's still having to be finalized. Obviously, it has to go through the league call and all those kinds of things, trying to figure out what all this is coming back. But again, Graham, the breaking news, Mitch Marner not hitting free agency.
Do you feel like this might take a weight off the Carolina Hurricanes front office shoulders in terms of free agency hasn't really begun, but that's maybe one of your top guys that's already off the board, but maybe it frees you up a little bit in terms of, all right, it kind of felt like there was the rumors, and we won't know, or we might not ever know, maybe down the road. There was the rumors and stuff that it was unclear if Marner even had the Hurricanes on his list. And I know last week we were talking about how, all right, well, if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, you're Eric Tulsky, the plan maybe tomorrow was just to call right away, call his agent, say, are we or are we not? And if the Hurricanes were on his list, then he could start maybe negotiating. And we were saying if he didn't have the Hurricanes on his list, to just go ahead, hang up the phone, move on from Mitch Marner. Like, how much does this change their free agency plan now?
I don't know if you mentioned earlier, is there a weight off their shoulder? I don't think it's a weight off their shoulder. I think it's just, okay, shift in focus. If we're not going to get Marner, we know he's off the board. Now, all 30 other teams in the NHL, because obviously Toronto, Vegas, part of this trade, all the other 30 teams in the NHL have to be, all right, what was plan B? Now, some teams were probably thinking, well, we're not going to be on the Mitch Marner deal anyway. But there is the trickle-down effect, right? Because now if, for example, a team that was interested in Mitch Marner now shifts their focus to Nikolai Ehlers or Brock Besser or someone else, a team that wasn't going to be on a Mitch Marner goes, well, wait a second. Now the pool got a little bit more thin, right? The free agency pool this offseason, it's not very deep. And the biggest piece of the free agent market, or a couple of the biggest pieces, are off the board. So again, if you're just tuning in with us, the breaking news in the NHL, the Carolina Hurricanes are not going to be getting Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner is signing an 8-year contract extension with the Toronto Maple Leafs as part of a sign and trade with the Vegas Golden Knights. So here's an interesting part about this as well, Graham, is that if Mitch Marner just wanted to sign outright with Vegas, the max he could have gotten was 7 years. By doing a sign and trade, he can get the 8th year on his deal, which I guess is an important thing for him. So 8 years, $12 million a year. Now, in terms of, obviously the trade officially has to go through. I've been refreshing the timelines here, Graham, and trying to figure out, okay, what's going back to Vegas and all those kinds of things, or going from Vegas back to Toronto. But this is going to have a big impact on everybody, because if you looked at the lack of a better term, the big board of free agents, like, for example, The Athletic actually earlier today, this is actually part of, from Chris Johnston. He put this out at like 12:40 today. You got something, Graham? More? Okay. Graham's got more breaking news. Hit us.
Well, here's another one off the list. As I was refreshing Elliot Friedman's Twitter page to find an update on Mitch Marner 1 minute ago, hearing Brad Marchand is closing on a 6-year extension in Florida. Just under $32 million is the total. The Panthers pulled it off. Very impressive. So I got to go change some descriptions and titles for this YouTube video.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. All right.
You know, I'm just taking starting 5 off the back and just boom. There we go.
That's just, yeah, okay. So, like, starting 5 is scrapped right now. This is a free agent frenzy on 99.9 The Fan, presented by John Heister Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. We're doing this, so if you want NHL news, obviously Canes, everything that's related to it, tune in here, because we're updating everyone on everything. So, okay, let's recap here, Graham, some of the big stuff that's happened even since the start of this show, all right? The Florida Panthers are keeping Aaron Ekblad on a 8-year contract at $6.1 million a year. Brad Marchand, you just said, by Elliot Friedman, 6-year contract, just under $32 million total. On-air math tells me, Graham, that's just over $5 million a year. So we'll do $5 and change million a year. Mitch Marner. Now, these are like three of the top like 4 or 5 free agents out there. Mitch Marner, 8 years, $12 million as a sign and trade from Toronto to Vegas. So 3 of the biggest pieces are off the board. So actually, I was just mentioning a moment ago before you hit us with that breaking news, is that Chris Johnston of The Athletic put down like a list of like the top free agents going into this offseason, like, top like 88 guys or something like that. You know who was number 1 on that list? Mitch Marner.
Yep.
You know who was number 2 on that list?
Brad Marchand.
You know who was number 3 on that list? Aaron Ekblad. So now you're getting into the top free agent out there, Nikolai Ehlers, Brock Besser. Those are the top free agent forwards that are out there, followed by Mikael Granlund. Now, Mikael Granlund, let's go ahead and bring up that clip from Kevin Weeks once again. Kevin Weeks, part of ESPN, former Carolina Hurricane himself, but joined the Adam Gold Show earlier today about why Mikael Granlund, a center from the Dallas Stars, could be a good fit for the Carolina Hurricanes.
Why not? He's proven that he could play in the postseason. He's proven he could play in the regular season. He plays multiple positions. Hard-working Finnish player. I'm sure he knows and has a relationship with Fishy, who they call down there, yeah. Mr. Aho, among others. And, I've always liked his versatility. I like his skill set. He's unafraid to make plays in the hard areas. And, every team, I shouldn't say every, the good teams have an identity. They have a defined identity in what their characteristics are. The Canes have those. I think he's somebody that they can plug into their system. And you don't necessarily, it doesn't have to be a huge out-of-pocket spend, but I think there could be some value there as a good top 6, maybe middle 6 player for the Canes that's a professional.
So Mikael Granlund is probably now one of the top 3 free agent forwards that are out there, Graham. Like one of the top 3. By the way, this is the starting 5, supposed to be, but breaking news, again, if you just missed it, Mitch Marner signing an 8-year, $12 million a year contract extension with the Toronto Maple Leafs as part of a sign and trade to go to Vegas. All right, so Mitch Marner is going to be a Vegas Golden Knight. Aaron Ekblad re-signed with the Florida Panthers earlier today. Brad Marchand re-signing with the Florida Panthers today. So now if you're Carolina, the competition for these free agents just got more intense.
I love how I asked you the question before we broke the Brad Marchand move of, did it felt like there was a weight lifted off the Hurricanes' shoulders?
I know.
And now it feels like maybe the weight might have just gotten right back on their shoulders with two of the top free agents off the board just like that.
So Carolina, again, Aaron Ekblad, 8 years, $6.1 million. Brad Marchand, it's 6-year contract. They said just under $32 million. So you're looking at about 5 and change in terms of Brad Marchand, 6 years. Mitch Marner, 8 years, $12 million a year. So now the competition, Graham, for whether it's Brock Besser, for Nikolai Ehlers, for Mikael Granlund, it only got more intense. Because now you start looking at the free agency pool for the Carolina Hurricanes and really any team around the league. I mean, a guy like Pius Suter, who's a center and actually put up 25 goals this past year for the Vancouver Canucks, like Pius Suter is going to get paid handsomely. Now, he's a left-handed center as well, probably not the biggest guy in the world, but put up 25 goals and 46 points this past year. Like, he could command as much as like a $5 million a year on the open market contract because the market is so thin. Now, for example, if a team wants a defenseman, I mean, Dmitry Orlov is floating around out there. That might get picked up by another team. Like, how much does Jack Roslovic, like, again, how thin the free agent market is. I mean, Jack Roslovic's not going to be coming back to the Carolina Hurricanes, but he might find himself in a situation where he's getting paid handsomely. They can say, oh, look, he was a 22-goal scorer this past year. Does Carolina go after a guy like Corey Perry, who's a burly physical winger? Granted, he's 40 years old, but, hey, can you play in the bottom 6 of our roster? But when we need you on the power play and bump up late in games, we need you to score around the net. And Corey Perry kept scoring in the postseason this past year. Last I checked, I don't know, do you throw $1 million deal at him that's incentive-laden for 1 year? What about a Connor Brown? I don't know. Like these, you are starting to get real thin real fast. And Graham, let's go and pull up the Eric Tulsky quote from back on Friday about teams and what they're looking for in free agency with players. So Eric Tulsky was asked about the offseason so far and about the draft. This is Eric Tulsky back on Friday. He did mention about how his phone was ringing in terms of trades, right? Phone was ringing. There's a lot of interaction with other teams and other general managers about potential trades, but we didn't see a lot of draft picks get moved for current players back on Friday during the draft, and Eric Tulsky explained why.
Almost every team in the league right now is looking to get better, and most years you have a few teams that are deep into rebuilds or starting rebuilds and are willing to move some of their veterans for picks. And this year, almost every team is saying if they move a player, they want players back. And that makes it hard to get deals done because everyone's trying to either, if everyone's trying to add to their team, there's sort of, we can't all add. It's hard to do a trade where both sides add. And so, I think that more than anything else has sort of slowed down the market right now. It's just everybody's looking to do the same thing at once.
So based off what Eric Tulsky, you heard just say there, he said that back on Friday. Based on what Eric Tulsky just said there, if Carolina is going to try and make a move to improve their roster, again, Mikael Granlund might be someone that they go after. Now, you're probably going to have to overpay a little bit because the market's so thin. That's what a guy like Mikael Granlund's going to demand a pretty high price. The whole thing in business, supply, demand, Graham? Supply and demand? Well, guess what? The supply is short and the demand is high. That's when prices inflate. Simple as that. But if Carolina wants to improve their roster, if they want to go after Jason Robertson, if they want to go after Tage Thompson or whomever, it's going to cost a lot. Like, you might have to be willing to give up a player that is currently on your roster and not just anybody. Like, you have to be willing to give away possibly a good player to go get someone even better. Another? All right, Graham. What else we got?
As I refresh Elliot Friedman's page once again 2 minutes ago, also hearing that Ivan Provorov, I want to butcher
Ivan
this name.
Provorov?
Yeah, Ivan Provorov will be re-signing in Columbus.
Okay, so there's a defenseman off the board. Ivan Provorov, left-handed defenseman, put up 33 points this past year for Columbus, left-handed guy, former Philadelphia Flyer. So there's a defenseman that comes off the board. If Carolina wants to improve their roster, again, Mikael Granlund might be the guy to go after, but the price for Brock Besser, for Nikolai Ehlers, those all just went up. It all just went up. And if Carolina wants to get better on their roster, this is why we say you might have to be willing to part with Jesperi Kotkaniemi. You might have to be willing to part with Jackson Blake. You might have to be willing to part with Bradley Nadeau. You might be willing to part with Scott Morrow because teams are going to want players back. And they might sit there and say, well, some of these guys are really young or are on, entry-level contracts, guys that we can grow and that can help with us right now and still get better in the future, and picks in order to get a player because the demand is going to be so high. Every team, Graham, around the NHL all got the massive bump of $7.5 million cap jump from last year. Do you have more breaking news?
I was just going to say.
I'm about to say, you're throwing me off for a loop here, Graham.
I was just thinking, are you even going to have any free agents tomorrow at this point?
That's a major question. It might be a couple of small moves here and there, but I don't know really what we're going to get. I really don't know tomorrow because, again, the pool, it's a shallow pool, Graham.
Just from starting the starting five, which now it's just free agent friendly, presented by John Heister, Brad Marchand, Mitch Marner, now Ivan Provorov. It feels like the Hurricanes have to go out and get Thompson and Robertson, right? Like, they have to try.
I mean, I would love one or both of those guys, but what would it cost to go get a Jason Robertson? In all honesty, it would cost you
like an Andrei Svechnikov, probably.
It might cost you that, or to get Tage Thompson, it's going to cost you that, or to go get Alex Tuck, it's going to cost you. To go get Alex Tuck, who's on the final year of his contract, a team's going to want players that can play right now. Well, that might cost you Jackson Blake and Bradley Nadeau and a pick to go get an Alex Tuck. Again, who's on the final year of his contract. Is he willing to re-sign with your team long term? Jason Robertson is going to be a restricted free agent after this year, so at least there's some sort of cost control. What is it now? What is it now?
Elliott Friedman's just working overtime right now.
Clearly.
Other announcements, Toronto signs Steven Laurent, LA signs Andrei Kuzmenko.
Okay, Andrei Kuzmenko. Oh, Stephen Lawrence. Former Carolina Hurricane.
Remember
3
that guy?
years. Yeah, I remember that guy. I like Steve. Lawrence was good. So, again, if you just missed that. So, again, these teams are actively re-signing their guys right now. Andrei Kuzmenko, 1 year, $4.3 million to stay in L.A. Stephen Lawrence, 3 years at $1.35 million a year to stay in Toronto. Here's the one thing I will say about this with Carolina is that pretty much everyone on their roster currently, with the exception of Mark Jankowski and Freddie Anderson, Carolina either has the players under control or has under contract for at least the next 2 seasons. The reason why I say under control is that after this upcoming season, Logan Stankoven, Jackson Blake, Alexander Nikishin are restricted free agents. Okay? So Carolina has control over these guys in terms of their rights. But everyone else on the roster, with the exception of Mark Jankowski and Freddie Anderson, everyone's under contract or under control for at least the next 2 seasons. So Carolina doesn't have to worry about, well, if we sign this guy, well, what about next year as well? They don't have to worry about that. But if Carolina wants to make moves to get somebody, they're going to have to be willing to make some trades and have to possibly swing big this offseason. So for those of y'all missed the breaking news, this happened 25 minutes ago. Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs is signing an 8-year, $12 million contract, $12 million a year contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs as part of a sign and trade to go to the Vegas Golden Knights. So basically he agreed upon the terms. He's signing it with Toronto, but he's going to get traded to the Golden Knights. So Mitch Marner is going to be a Golden Knight, 8 years, $12 million a year. Aaron Ekblad staying with the Florida Panthers, the defenseman, 8 years at $6.1 million a year. Brad Marchand staying with the Florida Panthers, 6 years at just over $5 million per year.
I mean, we went 0 to 100 super quick.
Free agency starts officially at noon tomorrow, folks. Stay locked in here on The Fan. We're going to keep you updated on everything.